Today we're going to be discussing a Cube V5, specifically how it attaches to the upper jib on one of the tables. This could be the wide glass, narrow glass, or HD. We'll also discuss the hanging bars and other accessories, how to align the cube on the table, and then how to remove it from the bracket if you wanted to put it on the floor. Every cube has its own 5 or 6 millimeter hex key, depending on when they were built, that are held in this little area right here, which is very convenient because you're going to need it to remove the hanging bars and also to loosen the bolts that hold the cube itself in place. First, we're going to talk about removing the hanging bar. Each bar has got bolts underneath of here. The wrench in, just loosen it, maybe one full turn, slide the hanging bar out. To replace the hanging bar onto the spider, as we call it, you've got 8 different positions where you can put it in. What we want to do here is just loosen this slightly so that this little plate on top is loosened. Push that up, slide that in until it stops, and then tighten until it's firm, doesn't wiggle around. Each hanging bar has 2 knobs, one on either side. We'll loosen those and we can slide those back and forth, tighten them down, and that may be a position where we'll string fishing line or clamp something to it. And we can take these, if we need to, move them in the channel and put multiple on each side. The knobs have this slotted washer, so if you're going to string fishing line across it, it won't get cut by putting it on the threads. Now we're going to discuss removing the cube from the upper jib on the table. First, we're going to start with shutting off the control unit, checking to make sure the green light on the motor cable is not illuminated, and we'll remove the motor cable. To remove the cube from the jib, we will use the same hex wrench we used before. It may be a 5 millimeter or 6 millimeter, depending on the model. Underneath the cube, there are 2 bolts, one on this side and one on that side. They can be accessed through the spider if it's aligned correctly. And we're going to want to loosen these. Now the important part is you do not want to completely remove these bolts. They should just be loosened until you hit a stop. Keeping in mind too, the cube will not fall, as it's just, you're loosening its grip on the click plate that it's attached to. Okay, once I have these loose, now the entire cube you lift up, probably have to wiggle a little bit and then slide to the side. The 2 stainless steel pegs on the back plate of the cube are what go into the click plate on the jib. The larger discs are inserted into the larger part of the click plate holes, pushed up, wiggled a little bit, and slid to the right. Once the cube is pushed to the right, it's secure but still loose, so we'll need to tighten the same 2 bolts. We'll do a few turns on each side and go back and forth so that it sits evenly. Until snug. Replace the motor cable and tighten its screws to make sure that they're secure. Now we're going to discuss precisely lining up the center of rotation on the cube with the table that it's above. If your lasers are already set up correctly from before, we will simply line the cube up with the center of those lasers. The easiest way to do that is to slightly loosen the click plate, maybe just a quarter to a half a turn, and then adjust that. On your X laser, which is the side, you'll line it up on this seam, which also lines it up with the center of the shaft of the cube. With that lined up, tighten it back up. And you'll do the same process with the Y laser coming from the back. There is no seam, but you'll look for the laser on the shaft and line that up as precisely as you can. You may have to go back and forth a couple of times to get it lined up.